Hi, I'm Simon Hepburn. I'm from School Media Team, and I'm just going to talk you through one of the sessions that we have on offer within the School Media Team. This is a session that has no technology in it, but it's essentially around planning and how a School Media Team might decide which stories to talk about. And it'll just take you through an overview of how a lesson might work. You know, if you're a teacher or another member of staff who's leading the group, or maybe you've got a group of sixth formers who you can give this information to and they can work on it themselves. One of the reasons why this sort of thing is so important in School Media Team is because in our experience of working with schools, it's so easy to get excited about technology, to start running around and filming, and actually not end up with anything that is particularly useful. So this is the planning session. Probably comes in very early when you've set up a School Media Team. So let's have a look at it and see if it would help your school. All of our lessons come with a quick overview of what the lesson plan is, so you can see here a little bit about the detail of what's going to happen, any equipment that you need and so on in advance. If you as a teacher want more information, there is an online discussion forum within our learning environment, so you can ask questions, or of course you can always get in touch with us via social media, or even sort of something as old-fashioned as email or telephone, in order to help, along with further resources. And as I said, the resources are also hosted on our learning platform as well. So this particular lesson or session is talking about content, and this model that we use here is one that was created actually by Google, and it's called the Hygiene Hub Hero model, and it's actually really good at just focusing a team on what really matters. Okay, what stories happen. Again, an introductory slide here. Why would we actually use this? Well, we don't want to just be dragged all over directions by people who are interested in sport, or people who might be interested in a particular academic things that are happening in the school. We want to focus on what shows the school at the best. We want to allow time to plan things. One of the things that School Media Teams can do is create features. They can actually do a bit more detail. So rather than just saying, we want a sports event, you can actually interview people who took part in it. You could talk to teachers, you could talk to parents, which has come up quite a bit of some of the work we've been doing with one school, and so on, and actually work out a little bit more in more depth with that. And again, also to think about communicating different ways. So if you are producing video, could you also write something for a school newsletter around it? Could you also come up with maybe some photography or some stills images that could be used on your website with that? And finally, of course, safeguarding is really, really important, and making sure you have permission is something that schools struggle with sometimes. And again, if you're planning in advance, that makes things much, much better. So the 3H model, the first things you might want to think about, and the first things you would ask your team to come up with, are really these sort of day-to-day messages. What do they think as students would actually make the school function better? So when we talked to one school in particular, I remember there was a lot of talk about changes in reporting systems, and the reports were coming in, and they said, we want to explain to our parents why reports are different and how things are different. The school teachers who were there said, oh, that's really interesting because we didn't think you knew about this at all. But again, these are things that need to be put on there to think about what's happening. Parking is always an issue with schools, and so on. And obviously in recent years we've had a lot of people talking about COVID and safety and so on with that. So again, this is something that maybe your School Media Team might pick one or two things to start thinking about it, and start thinking maybe how we could communicate these ideas. The second part is hub stories. Now these are the key marketing messages of the school. If you have a marketing team, if you've been doing marketing for a while, the school probably knows what they are. It may be that that they relate to the ethos of the school. It may be that they relate to a goal that you're trying to do with the school, for example, opening up a sixth form or growing a sixth form or something like that. So again, these are maybe to be shared by staff members with the students, and saying these are things we want to show. How would you show that? How could you show, for example, that you support people academically? How could you show the different clubs that we've got here? So again, people might come up with those examples. They might come up with different examples. And then finally, again, the third H is the hero event, and very much looking at projects, but not just looking at them as one-offs. oh, here's a celebration. Actually, can we talk about these things over time? So how can we plan to get people excited to come along to an event? How can we actually share the event itself when it's live? How can we follow up on those events afterwards? So again, these 3 slides are really ones where you would sit down with your school media team and you would talk for 5 or 10 minutes about each one and come up with some ideas. And it may be that you would then need to start sort of focusing them a little bit. So the calendar, and I'll show you an example of a calendar in a second. The example calendar said maybe you'll do 1 story a week. It depends very much about your school and how big it is. If you're a small primary school that's just starting, you might want to focus on just one thing over a few weeks and make sure it's really, really good at first. If you're a big sixth form, big school with a big sixth form with lots of people who know what they're doing, you might want to start off and as you said, and start off on a story a week and see how things happen. Remember that you're also going to be training as you go through this, doing these sessions, learning how to film, learning how to edit, and so on. So there is going to be things are going to be slower at first. Planning ahead is really important because of the chance of getting in front of people. Things slip on timing and so on. So you can always move things backwards and forwards if that happens. If something exciting happens, yes, you could do it, but actually at this stage when you're just starting, it's probably better not to try it too much to move things in. Try and focus on that for a while. So here's an example of a content calendar that might a school media team might be putting together, particularly once they're really organised, once they know what they're doing, and up and running. So you've got here a story about a math challenge success, which you would film and you would video and you'd interview the maths teachers and so on. Lots of different ideas happening. At the same time, you also got a hero, a big production, the whole school production that maybe a team is working on and getting people excited about as well. So there's a lot going on here and there's a lot to manage. But if your school media team can actually put this together, it will show your school off really wonderfully and make a big difference. So a few things just to check. Once you've got your content calendar ready, make sure obviously that people are happy to share the story. That's obviously not going to be an issue if it's school doing really well in a maths competition. But if you're focusing, for example, on an individual's achievement or exam results and publicising those, people might not want to talk about that. You might be involved with external organisations that are really happy to talk about what they're doing, but need permission and need a couple of weeks to talk about that. Any students involved in the actual event, must have permission and this is say check your school's policies and so on. But it is particularly if you're going to feature someone in a video article or something bigger, make sure that they've got specific permission for that, and then make sure you've got the time and resources. And again, that's important. Don't think we'll send one person to do this story. As we'll find out later on as we go through these series, there's a lot of involvement in creating videos and editing them. Make sure you've got the time, make sure you've got the resources for that to happen. So, as you say, there's your calendar, and what we would say is, if you've got a calendar and maybe you haven't got it full, or there's gaps, or there's a particular message that you want to get there, maybe over the next few days, you could share the calendar with other staff. You could go out and do some research yourself among friends, and so on. Get the students to go out and do some research, or you could have assemblies at school that say, we're the school media team. This is what we're looking for. Please tell us what's actually happening. So that's the sort of thing that you might do in the second week of setting up a school media team. Once you've got your people involved, and then we move on to talk about how to actually go and film things.